Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Easy Conversations, a podcast about having easy conversations. I'm your host, Furkhan Dandia. In this week's episode, I sit down with Jeff Berube. I met Jeff recently and we really connected and have become good friends since. Jeff and I both have regulating anger in common, and that is why I invited him on this podcast. In this episode, Jeff talks through his journey of recognizing how he needed to process his anger better, work on himself, and how he found help. Through group counseling and therapy, by being vulnerable and openly speaking about his challenges, Jeff was able to dig deep and find answers. Now, Jeff is looking to give back and help other men who struggle in the same way, especially with mental health. He is also part of a charity called the Royal Oak Project. I encourage you to check out this non for profit cause at royaloakproject.org. I also applaud Jeff for not only sharing his story, but also wanting to give back. If at the end of the episode you can leave a review, I would be truly grateful. Jeff, welcome to the podcast and thanks for joining today. And so I wanted to thank you for that first. And yeah, how are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be one of the first episodes on your podcast. That
Yeah,
should
no,
be interesting.
for sure. Yeah. And, I've been grateful for you sharing your story. And, I think it's really compelling and I think it could help a lot of people who kind of experience the same challenges, including myself. I've kind of been on a similar journey like yourself. So, yeah, so let's just get into it. Just for the listeners, maybe you can tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we can kind of go from there.
All right. What do you want? Do you want the whole life story? How I got to where I am right now, or
Just
or
just the
we just
Cole's notes.
okay? So originally from Quebec City, moved to Alberta in 2005. Was in New Patch for about 5 years and ran my own company, aka was self-employed for about seven in the marketing slash web application development capacity. Did a little bit of went back to school when I was 28. Have a family, two kids, 10-year-old daughter and a 5-year-old son. I'm separated at the moment. Currently work downtown Calgary. I'm in sales and marketing in oil and gas.
Cool. So you
That's the overview.
moved out to Alberta like during the boom. How was that?
Yeah, no, I totally did. So my brother he traveled out west. He went on a car ride for 2 weeks, and
Yeah.
he ended up landing in Grand Prairie at some point. And back in the days, I was 20 years old, and I wasn't going anywhere good with my life in Quebec. And so when he came back, he's like, "Hey man, if we get our H2S ticket, which is $200, and our first aid ticket, which is $160, we can be on our way to making $85,000 a year without any education." And I was like, "Are you serious?" He's like, "Absolutely." I was like, "Okay, let's do it." So we both bought a one-way ticket to Grand Prairie, Alberta. We didn't know where we were going to stay. 1 week later, we're on the plane, landed in GP. Uh, didn't know where we were going to stay. $500 in our pocket and a suitcase full of clothes. And that was it. And we made it work.
Wow. So
So, yeah.
so I've never been to Grand Prairie, but at least I know a lot of my friends have been there. So I guess for the listeners who've never even heard of Grand Prairie, can you maybe give us an idea of what it's like there, what kind of town it is, and moving from Quebec City, leaving your family behind, what was it like going there, even though you were there with your brother? But
So Grand Prairie is a very transient town. It's I call it the promised land for high school dropouts. So you can land there and have an very well paying oil and gas job with little to no education at all. Um, and leaving Quebec was I mean, it was stressful to an extent, but it was also exciting. It was a way to cut the ties with the parents, fly on your own. I can't say that I had this, you know, didn't feel like I had, what do you call that? Separation anxiety or anything like that.
Yeah, yeah.
I was more excited than nervous about it.
Okay. And you're so is it still the same in Grand Prairie? Like oil and gas is pretty busy, you could get a decent job, or it's kind of quieted down now with the current economy?
To be honest with you, I'm not sure. I think that it might still be one of the more booming areas. You and I being in oil and gas, we know that the current area that's doing anything is Northeast BC or Northwest Alberta, because they have all this Duvernay and Montney gas play that's happening right now. So I haven't been there in I haven't been there in 5 years. So I'm not sure what the situation on the ground is there, but um, if there's anywhere you want to be in Alberta to be getting a job right now, that's probably one of the better places.
Yeah. Yeah. And just to give an idea, what's the nearest biggest hub from Grand Prairie, and how far are we talking?
So Grand Prairie is the biggest hub in the area. It's a 60,000 people town, but it serves as a hub for about 300,000 people. So people from Peace River and Dawson Creek, Fort St. John, all of those places around there come to Grand Prairie because it's got all the amenities and a decent sized mall and all
Yeah.
that good stuff. So, and then from there, the closest thing would be, if you're headed east, would be Edmonton, which is about 5 hours away.
Okay.
And maybe like a Prince George, would be 5 hours away west.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're kind of out in the middle of nowhere in a way, um, away from the
Ab-
excitement. Yeah.
Absolutely. I don't know if it's don't know if I would call it away from the excitement. I mean, it's a working town. The median age is very low. It's in 20s, 30s kind of thing. The Fortunately, it's kind of a incubator for bad behavior. Lots of young guys going to work in the bush for long periods of time and then coming back to a city that doesn't have that much to do in terms of activity and with a lot of money. So it ends up being a kind of a serious drug hub. In fact, at the end there, it was the worst town three years in a row before I left. So it's got its own challenges.
Yeah. Yeah. And how did that impact you being there in that kind of environment?
Um, I'm not sure. I mean, I think we're all a product of our environments, depending on the stories that we play a part in those places. I'm sure that it had some effect on me on the ways that I think and both positive and negative. Um, yeah, that's. I mean, I there's good and there's bad. I was there for 10 years, so it would be tough to nail down a particular um, story to share right now, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. No, no, that's fair. I do agree with you. So now you're doing a lot of work. You've mentioned that, being involved and doing group sessions. Like, maybe share a little bit about that. Like, what's that been like, and what's kind of the source of that, and walk us through your journey.
Okay, so yeah, I think some of the conversations that you and I have had, we've connected a lot around men's mental health,
Yeah.
and self-development, improving yourself, continually working on yourself. And so some of the stuff that I shared, my struggle throughout my life has been mostly with anger. I've had a struggle with anger, for which I've done all self-imposed work about. So I attended the John Hopkins Society in Grand Prairie, which was your typical anger management program, like 13 session, 12-step program type of thing, which I didn't find to be super effective. And then when I moved to Calgary, I started noticing that the stress from work was getting carried into my personal life. And I started noticing that my anger was more present. I was more snappy, and I was taking it out on my kids. I was taking it out on my partner, not in a physical manner,
Yeah.
um, but certainly what you could qualify about as emotional abuse at times. Um, Not on purpose, not in narcissistic fashion, but
Yeah.
um, just I was battling my own stresses and my own um, notions and ideologies, and was very inflexible. So I decided to research and to see if there was any anger management programs available around. And I ended up landing on one that was put on by the Calgary Women's Shelter. And what was really interesting about that program is that, first off, it was free. All you had to do was to go in there and say, hey, you know what, my anger is affecting my life. And you ended up getting paired with a therapist. You're doing one-on-one sessions once a week for as long as they deemed it useful for you. So they would do 3-month tranches of they would get funding for you for 3 months at a time, and then you would have to reassess every 3 months. And so I ended up getting a year out of it. And one of the really, really interesting parts about it is that every time I would go in, I would do a check-in with what's called, I think it's called ORS or something like that. And basically, it's like 4 sliders on a screen. You sit down and you gauge how you are doing in 4 different areas of your life. So there's one that's for personal life. The second one, I think, is friends and family. The third one is work. And then the fourth one is overall.
Hmm.
So you can slide the slides around. It's not like locked into any particular numbers, but it ends up being on a scale of 0 to 10. And interestingly enough, they graph this data as you go through the session. So you get a data point every week if you're doing a session every week. And it was really interesting to see at the end of all the sessions, kind of the progression, not only in terms of where my average was sitting, but also about the kind of the delta, like the amplitude of the fluctuations, about feeling really down or really up,
Yeah.
and how therapy for a year was able to stabilize that, where the ups and downs were much less pronounced and they were in more of the upper area of the graph,
Hmm.
which to me indicated that mental health work such as therapy and counseling, um, I think it works a little bit like working out, where a lot of people think, hey, you can just go to therapy 3, 4, 5 times, and then they're hoping that they're going to have some magic solution that's going to work out. And the reality is more like normal working out, where after 1 year, if you take 2 pictures, one when you start and one after 1 year, you're actually going to see a difference after 1 year. But if you
Hmm.
do one picture after one session and one after 5 sessions, there will be zero, uh, virtually no difference, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, that's a little bit of what I shared. I think with you was
Yeah.
around the therapy and how I think it really helped to improve my general disposition.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I think I love the analogy you use because I've used it too, and it's yeah, you basically have to train your brain like you would train for sports or your muscles, right? And it takes time and effort, and you have to stick with it, and you have to do all the things right. And there's gonna be days where you fall back or kind of recede, but it's being able to pick yourself up again and keep moving forward. I guess an interesting thing though, and again, I do want to make sure that we acknowledge that there's nothing wrong with anger. It's
Mhm,
how it's what we do with it, right?
mhm.
And that's where the challenge is most people, including myself at times, it's I don't know how to channel that anger. And it sounds like that was the work you were doing. I guess one of the other questions I would have is, so when you think women's shelter, was there anything that intimidated you, or were you scared of being how it would come across, as how it was going to be perceived? Did you have any hesitations going for those sessions out of the women's shelter?
100%.
Yeah,
So it's not on the same. So like the women's shelter, I don't believe is in the same building,
yeah,
but the therapy uh, sessions are funded by the Calgary Women's Shelter, right?
yeah,
Um, so absolutely, even when I share it to this day, I'm careful about just saying that I got free therapy somehow, and I don't really bring up the anger part or the Calgary Women's Shelter, because I the moment you mention that, people will go immediately to, hey, he's a woman beater, which is not the case,
yeah, yeah, yeah. No,
So
absolutely. Yeah,
unfortunately, it's got to be careful, and you still got to manage the perception out there, unfortunately. But I guess I'm sharing it here on this podcast today, so that's a step forward.
yeah, no, and again, I want to acknowledge that, and again, it is very courageous to talk about that, and so yeah, you should be proud of that. I guess what I would like to understand, and maybe I don't know if you have the answer, but was there ever a moment where you're like, okay, you know what, this is really impacting my relationships, and I need to do something about it? Did you have that moment, or it was like you knew this was something you had to deal with?
I'm not sure what exactly prompted it. I knew that I had some demons, but there was no like particular event. In fact, I sought the program when at the time it was still with my ex-partner, and so my ex-partner and my kids were on a trip to Grand Prairie to go visit family there, and I was left behind in Calgary working. So I don't think that there was like some kind of event that was like a catalyst.
Hmm.
However, I did notice at work, um, I'm a very driven person, and I started getting this perception that um, I looked up to executives, and I looked up
Yeah,
to all kinds of successful people, and they had this very stoic and kind of even keeled um, appearance to them. Right? If
yeah,
that's the case, I don't know, but they carried themselves in a way that was very even keeled, and I didn't perceive myself like that. So part of it was motivated by wanting to advance in my career and wanting to make it into the upper echelons of the
hmm,
corporate world.
hmm,
So there was, I think, multiple motivators. I've always knew that I had those types of issues. Uh, I was working with a friend uh, back when I started in Calgary, and it was missing a little bit of the professional barrier that you would require normally if you were working with people that you don't know.
hmm.
It was more prone to aggressive interactions and things of that nature, and I realized that something had to be done about it.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely there was a professional motivator there when I'm thinking about it right now. And then there was a personal motivator in terms of a lot of explosive fights in my previous relationship. And so wanting to at least fix my part of it, I'm firm believer that most of the time things are not just one-sided,
Mm-hmm.
and that,
Absolutely.
takes two to tango kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I wanted to at least fix my part, if anything, to see if I could
Mm-hmm.
um, help the relationships to some extent.
Yeah. Yeah. No, for sure. And did you feel while you were going through that, the motions and doing all that work, did you feel comfortable enough to talk about it, or when you did talk about it, how did people receive it? Or did you feel like there was that stigma that you can't really talk about it because it would give a negative image of yourself?
Um, no, I would share that I was in therapy once a week.
Yeah.
Um, my perception of it, and this is why I really like the program at the Calgary Women's Shelter, is that it wasn't just it wasn't like around anger. It was around feelings and emotional intelligence, which is what I was after.
Mm-hmm.
And so to me, my own perception was I was doing work around my emotions. I had lots of repressed emotions. I was very everything was coming out as anger is really what it
Yeah.
was.
Yeah.
I had huge perceptions of weakness that I sought to disprove constantly. So there was happy Jeff,
Yeah.
and anything else, sad Jeff. Well, sad is not a manly emotion, so that was
Yeah.
coming out as anger. Scared, well, that's not a manly emotion. That's coming out as anger.
Yeah.
Angry, well, that's definitely a manly emotion. That's still coming out as anger. So everything was coming out as anger. So there was basically two emotions, and I knew that wasn't healthy, and that I needed to do something about it. And so sharing that, saying that I was in therapy, to me, the concept of therapy wasn't shameful. So I didn't have a problem really sharing that. I just didn't share where I was doing it or why I was doing it. Kind of what was the uh, whatever set it off, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I guess I want to touch on the fact that you mentioned, it was repressed emotions, and there was that again image of being manly. And I think when we've had our conversations, you've talked about, okay, what's the root of all of that? When you dig all the way down to the bottom, what is the root of it?
And so yeah, that's what, that's the work that I did for a year.
Yeah.
That's the work that I'm still doing to this day, and that's these end up being deeply ingrained feelings that drive your behaviors, right? So doing that work around it, I think for me, there was a few episodes in my life where I'm sure everybody's experienced it, where after the episode, you wish you would have reacted in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
You wish you would have stood up for yourself, or you wish you would have said something, or and you cowered it out. You didn't have the courage to do what you wanted to do because you feared the repercussions.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know about you, but often that stuff would replay in the shower, or where you replay it and you're like, I wish I said that, or you know what, I wish that I would have hit that person, and
Yeah.
just stood up for myself or something, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that stuff honestly tormented me for a long time until I did something about it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a good something. It was it was getting into fights in bars, and it was a lot of physical aggression to prove that I wasn't this weak person that got stepped on in school. And I'm not gonna say like I wasn't bullied in school.
Yeah.
Like there was no recurring pattern of getting bullied or anything like that, but I hung on to single events so hard, and I didn't realize it, right? But I hung on to these single events so hard and built defense mechanisms around those stories, and those defense mechanisms were so strong that they made me turn into something that was just as bad on the opposite end of the spectrum.
Yeah.
Instead of being on the weak end of the spectrum, I was what I would call on the hyper aggressive end of the spectrum,
Yeah.
trying
So
to make up for all these bad stories, or these stories that I really hung on to, which really at this point in my life had absolutely no bearing. Nobody had
hmm
any idea about any of them. I mean,
hmm
moving to a different part of Canada, nobody had
yeah.
any clue that, one time in ninth grade, this guy said something bad to me in front of a crowd, and I didn't have a comeback, and I was just shy and cowered out. And then
hmm
it came out, 10 years later as uh, somebody being a little, um, obnoxious in a bar when they were drunk,
Yeah.
getting punched in the mouth,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
which, I don't know if you've ever heard the quote, Ferk, um, and I'm not gonna repeat it verbatim because I don't know it by heart, but
Yeah.
there's a quote that says that, at first when men are exposed to violence, they're repulsed by it. As they keep getting exposed to violence, they become accustomed and accept it. And as they keep getting exposed to violence, then they embrace it and they
hmm
use it.
hmm
And I landed in that part of things, on a physical level with just strangers, and on an emotional level with my family. And
hmm
so anytime that I felt that I was getting, that I felt some type of aggression, or some type of reprimand, or somebody's, especially with your partner, when your partner, is accusing, I don't know if you want to call it accusing you of something, or saying that you've done something wrong, excuse me, you um what most people hear, it doesn't matter what the message is, it all ends up coming down to a thing that's, I'm not good enough. And when I would hear, internally, I'm not good enough, I would lash back out with some
hmm
violence,
Yeah.
which is not healthy, and you can't go through your life like that, right? So um, that's really how I got into this whole mental health and embracing mental health
Yeah.
um, work.
So yeah, I mean, again, thanks for sharing all that. So obviously you would feel weak, and in order to compensate for that, you would um, react in certain ways so you could tell yourself that you're not weak. But when you were hearing that message or feeling that weakness, the message you were receiving deep down was that you're not good enough.
Mhm. Or I'm weak. For me, my tape. Um, some people call it a tape, which is something
Yeah,
that you replay to yourself. My
yeah,
tape is I'm weak, right?
yeah,
But really, I'm weak will translate to I'm not good enough. A lot of people might hear I'm not good enough, and I'm
yeah,
sure you got your own
yeah.
tapes that are, might be different. But at the end of it, everyone's tapes can be um, summed up to I'm not good enough.
Yeah.
And how you react to it, it depends on the person. Some people react with aggression, some people react with sadness, they shell up. There's all kinds of possible
Yeah,
reactions to that, right?
absolutely. Yeah, yeah, no. Everyone reacts differently. For everyone, the message is different, but you're right. When you really get down to the root of it, it is that feeling of not being worthy. Um, and that's what triggers it all. So I guess if you wanted to, if wanted to share anything or provide any advice, like if someone else or out there is struggling in a similar fashion, perhaps with anger or whatever it is, what would you like to tell them? Like, yeah, what message would you like to give them?
So I'm gonna put this first forward. I think that anger is just one of the many expressions of something being wrong with your mental health in a sense.
hmm
Not necessarily anger, but like a repeated pattern of it, and repeated pattern of behaviors that are destructive like that. But it doesn't have to be anger. For some men that might manifest as depression. For some people, it might manifest as depression. For some
Mhm.
people, it might manifest. There's all kinds of manifestations of it. And
Mhm.
but whether you go to like an anger management program or whatever it is, I think that at the end of the day, therapy and talking through your feelings is really key to that. And that's doing that mental workout is really what it is. Because if you can't understand why you act the way you do, then you're empowered to change that.
Mhm.
Might take time, but that you'll be empowered to do that. And so my advice and um, as a result of doing all this therapy and receiving it for free, being part of these programs, um, I'd love to give that back to men in particular, because I feel that men are probably the segment of the population that's most left behind when it
Mhm.
comes to mental health matters.
Mhm.
Um, I think that there's still a huge stigma around it. Talking about going to therapy or counseling is perceived as weak. It's
Mhm.
perceived, and weakness is perceived as unmanly, and we all know that. And so most men will avoid it, think that they don't need it. Um, and you might be well adjusted enough that you can carry through life with that. And I mean, you could carry through life without working out also, um, but you're going to end up probably having some health problems earlier in your life, and there's all kinds of
Mhm.
ramifications from that. So my advice is seek help. Um, Talk with people, you know find therapy if you can. There's sliding scale therapy. We all know that therapy is super expensive.
Mhm.
Find those free programs, or seek sliding scale therapy that's based on your salary so that it's affordable. But do the work, and do it repeatedly,
Mhm.
do it consistently, and you will see an improvement. You will see an improvement in your life, and it's worth it.
Okay, well, no, that's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. I completely agree, and I couldn't have said it any better. So I guess another question I would have is, so where are you on your journey now? Do you feel like you know are you still continuing on the journey? Because the way I look at it is it's never ending, right? My experience has been like, once you get into it, you start learning so much. And, just when you think you've worked past one issue, another one kind of surfaces and you're like, oh, wow, okay, well, this is another thing I need to work through. But where are you on your journey, and what do you think about that?
So on my journey currently, I am up and down still, to an extent. It's not as bad as it used to be, but I still have, what I feel are relapses. And my goal is, as I tell it to my therapist, is to be what I call movie dad. So,
Yeah.
we know the dad that we see in the movies that wakes up and is just, so emotionally intelligent. It's that Steve Carell dad, or it's that, you guys know exactly which dad I'm talking about. And so my journey for me is always, as I said, I think that no matter what your issue is, whether it's sadness or it's anger or it's whatever, or fear, anxiety, you name it, it all comes down to therapy. So my journey for me is, currently I came off that program, but they offer other programs, and so
Hmm.
right now I'm doing groups once a week, on Mondays, that are small groups of men that have went kind of through the same therapy thing, and these ones are around parenting. And so I guess that's my workout. You get to share some of the challenges you've had around parenting, and they give you, so there's two programs I went through. The first one is called Caring Dads, which is about 20 weeks. And that one is basically about parenting, whether you're with your partners or not with them,
Hmm.
and having some good behaviors. And to be honest, I don't know that that's so much for the program that I'm there, but it's more for the therapeutic aspect. And once again, talking about an emotional intelligence, and that empathy piece with your children, with the people that are in your life. And then the second one that I'm doing right now is called Circle of Security. Once again, all these are all free programs that are put
Hmm.
through, uh, put on by the Calgary Women's Shelter. And so with that, that's part of my journey. The other part now is that I want to give back uh, to people. I want to, I feel incredibly uh, blessed and grateful to have been able to go through all of this therapy at absolutely no cost, but just my own time commitment. And I would love for as many men as possible to be able to go through that as
Hmm.
well at no cost. And because I think that, um, if we had more emotionally intelligent men around, and I know emotional intelligence sometimes sounds a little bit weak to some guys, but it's not about being, a feminist or being a weak person. Um, this is about being emotionally intelligent with your family and with your kids, and your kids feeling safe to come to you with your emotions. Often if you ask kids if they had something tough to talk about, who they would go to,
Yeah.
you'd naturally gravitate towards mom. But what if they could gravitate towards both parents,
Yeah.
very easily? Um, so with that, I'm in the process of starting an organization, a not-for-profit organization to raise money for men's mental health and to try and provide funding to this Calgary Women's Shelter program to start with, and try and put more men through it. But hopefully, um, provide similar like money in different cities for similar programs, or even in state
Hmm.
these types of programs in Alberta, in Canada, and internationally eventually, so that as many men as possible are able to do this and to experience this, and to become better for themselves, their families, their coworkers, and their social
Yeah.
lives.
Yeah, no, that's amazing and very noble of you. So while we're on that topic, if people want to be a part of this, or if they want to learn more about this program, how do they find out, or where do they go to get more details, or be able to support it?
All right, so we're in the process of putting the website together, but the name of the organization is called the Royal Oak Project, and you can find it online at royaloakproject.org. At the moment, you will only find a mailing list, but you can add yourself to the mailing list, and once the website goes live, um, you will be notified. And then from there on, if people want to get involved, there's going to be multiple ways to get involved. Obviously, donating is going to be one of the main ones, but being a volunteer for events is going to be another one. Also, submitting potential organizations to be grantees to
Hmm.
receive grant money from the organization is going to be another one. And then the final one is going to be to direct uh, the men in their lives that could use this.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah,
That's awesome.
once
So royaloakproject.org.
org, that's right.
Okay, perfect. And I just wanted to touch on one thing, and I know you mentioned that there are relapses, and I also have relapses, and I just want to make sure for people listening that there's nothing wrong with having a relapse, and it doesn't mean that everything you've done is completely gone to waste. It is the way I look at it, a relapse is an opportunity for me to recognize how I can be different next time. And it's granting myself forgiveness, but at the same time, using it as an opportunity for a lesson. And if I'm not taking a lesson out of that relapse, then yeah, then obviously there's no point in that. But, be, you know, have grace, have forgiveness for yourself, but take those relapses as an opportunity to learn so you can do better next time.
Absolutely. And once again, I'm going to bring back the workout analogy. Sometimes you fall off the bandwagon on the weekend.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
you have more than one cheat day,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
on your diet. This
Yeah.
it's one of those things where it's just like working out. You
Yeah.
have ups and downs, and even though, and what you would see over a year of working out is you would trend up in general in your strength or whatever it is that you're
Yeah.
measuring. But if you make the window smaller, you're going to notice that you got ups and downs between your workouts. You're not hitting always your record every workout. You're not,
Right.
and so I think that the mental health component is just like that. There are so many factors in our lives and so many stressors, and I think it's really about taking responsibility for it, and so that it's not shame, it's just guilt.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, making the necessary adjustments. Because often for me, I think what I found is hindsight is 2020,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll see, looking back at my behavior, I'll be like, oh, why didn't I feel this red flag coming on? Why didn't I stop in the middle? I had a choice there of continuing to yell or stopping, right? And I chose the comfortable route, which was yelling.
Yeah.
So um yeah, I think that, as you said, you need to have grace. You need to forgive yourself, and as necessary, you need to expand the window that you're looking into and say, hey, you know what? I only used to be movie dad 10% of the time. Now I'm movie dad 25% of the time.
Yeah.
It's an improvement. So it's about being better than yesterday, or trying to be. And if you're not, then to keep striving for it.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. And thanks for touching on that too. But this has been great. I'm again really grateful you came on here, shared your story, the message. I really hope people take a lot out of this because I did. And again, I want to express, again, gratitude for you being vulnerable enough to share your story. And you have a lot to be proud of, and everything you're doing now in terms of the work to give back is phenomenal. I'm sure it's going to make a big difference in the lives of other people, whoever experiences the program as well as the people in their lives. So that's amazing. Any final thoughts or anywhere you want to share if people want to get a hold of you? Yeah.
Um, yeah, as I said, I'd say the main thing is yeah, connect on, go visit the website, add yourself to the mailing list so you can informed about what we're doing with the Royal Oak project. And if you want to get a hold of me, connect with me on LinkedIn. Add me up on
Okay.
LinkedIn,
All
and
right.
yeah, that's about it.
Okay. Awesome. Okay. Well, thanks again. Well, that's the end of the podcast. Thanks again for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. And again, please leave a review at the end of the episode. I would truly appreciate it. Until next week.